I am to be with this incredible cast of speakers. I'm deeply moved by what I've heard, and I'm looking forward to hearing so many of the other observations today. Let's see if this is working. Yeah. So, as you heard, I'm with the Humane Society of the United States, so this may seem like a little bit of a turn in the road on this issue, but I don't think it is in any way. You can see from our logo that we work to protect all animals, whether it's animals on puppy mills or animals who are victims of animal fighting operations or killing of whales or seals or animals on factory farms. And the fundamental issue that we work on at the Humane Society of the United States, or that we seek to address, is the misuse of power. In the relationship between humans and animals, we hold all the cards. We have all the power. And I have always thought it was a basic test of our humanity about how we treat those who are powerless before us. And this is a question of how we use power and how we handle this immense authority that we have over other creatures. And also the clock isn't going yet, so if you could start that clock. And for me, I felt a real kinship and a bond with other animals when I was a child. That's not me, but that connection between humans and animals is an enduring one. It's been seen through all of human history. It's had different manifestations in different times, but there is a connection between us and other animals. All of us feel it, and kids especially feel this connection. And we are living in a moment of incredible contradiction in terms of our relationship with animals. We have so many expressions of love and appreciation for animals, yet we also have so much cruelty on a vast scale. And one of the enterprises that we're engaged in is trying to have people live up to this kind of instinctive connection we have with animals and to honor that relationship in so many ways. And you know, one might think that it's a narrow question about how we treat animals, but in my work, I see every day that the issue of cruelty can never be just confined to animals. When you're cruel to animals, it fans out and radiates out throughout society. And the converse is also true, that when we're kind and compassionate to animals, that kindness also radiates out. You know, when we see animal cruelty in a household, if the dog is being abused, if a cat is being abused, if some other creature is being abused, in 75% of those settings, there's also some other form of domestic violence. One day it's the animal, another day it's a child, another day it's a spouse. When we raid a dogfighting operation, we don't just see people who just happen to think this is fun to watch dogs attack and kill each other. We see other criminal activity. We see so many other expressions of a loss of empathy and a loss of decency. So our enterprise has never been just about being kind to animals. It's about increasing the quotient of decency and kindness that exists throughout our society. And when we look at the issue of agriculture, which has been said before is one of the fundamental human enterprises, I mean, let's face it, these are living, breathing, feeling creatures. They want to avoid pain and suffering just as much as we want to avoid it. They want to live as much as we want to live. They don't want to be tormented. And yes, using animals in food production means that the animals are at least going to have one very bad day. But agriculture represented this notion of a bond for so many hundreds of years and thousands of years that there was a connection between the farmer and the animal. It was called animal husbandry. But we moved away from that And we moved away from this notion of the farmer tending to his or her flock, and we moved to the days of meat science, where animals were treated as things or objects or instrumentalities. They were really, in our modern industrial age, and really in the last 50 years, they've been turned into meat, milk, and egg-producing machines. And a system that treats the animals as objects and commodities, that practices that mentality of losing empathy, is it very much of a big step to then dehumanize the workers who are thrust into that very system? I mean, isn't it really about the misuse of power and how in so many ways that same expression of misuse of power, that abuse of power, one day it's the animal victim, another day it's the worker in the slaughterhouse? I mean, these things are connected, and we should never be seduced by this notion that we're all siloed in our little unit, and that these things aren't more fundamental in terms of the enterprise. You know, agriculture has changed so much. And of course, we have so many small farmers who are honoring that standard of animal husbandry today and properly caring for the animals. But now we have these enormous industrialized farms in animal agriculture. And here, with these enormous buildings where animals are crammed side by side, sometimes in cages and crates barely larger than their bodies and unable to move, we don't even know what animals are on this farm. It could be pigs, it could be turkeys, it could be chickens. But there are thousands of them if they're the mammals, or there are hundreds of thousands of them if they're the birds, set in these windowless houses, crammed so tightly that they can't even turn around. That means that we're concentrating manure. It means we're concentrating all of the waste. It means that the air that the animals breathe in is the same air that the workers breathe in, that's ammonia-laden, that's filled with toxins that make this a fundamentally unhealthy environment for everybody who's involved in the enterprise. And of course, this is so toxic that it flows out. See that manure lagoon? It can leach into the groundwater. It pollutes the air for half a mile or a mile. It makes living in these communities terrible. We just worked with some folks in the Central Valley of California with a huge egg farm was their neighbor with 750,000 birds. They couldn't even leave their home, the neighbors. And if they did, their clothes smelled, their quality of life was destroyed by this industrial farming operation. And you know, we've done undercover investigations and really looked behind the scenes. This was a plant in Chino, California, the Hallmark Westland plant that was specializing in slaughtering spent dairy cows. These cows had been engineered to produce enormous volumes of milk, so much so that it taxed their system. And then when they were used up, they weren't retired somewhere, they were sent to a slaughter plant to be turned into cheap ground beef. And the system was so ruthless with these animals that they were landing at this facility with an inability to walk. They were non-ambulatory, some of them were. And the workers were told, get those animals moving. Get them moving. They were ordered to treat these animals like things. And you know, if you go inside the slaughter plant, especially the beef slaughter plants, the workers are taking the animals apart piece by piece, and they're making repetitive motions to cut the animals up. And those repetitive motions, just like we heard with the strawberry pickers, I mean, it leads to carpal tunnel syndrome, it leads to other physical ailments. We're talking sharp equipment where people get cut and people get injured all the time. I mean, we're talking about a system where those overseeing it are concerned about production and efficiency. And they've forgotten about the other values that make us the society that we want to achieve and the society that we want to be. You know, you look at, this was an investigation we did at Smithfield, the largest hog producer in the world. You see that these sows are kept in tiny cages so they can't turn around. They bite on the bars hour after hour, day after day, so much so that it chafes their skin. It causes them to bleed. You can see blood on the concrete. These are intelligent animals. They never get a chance to do more than take one step forward and one step back for their entire lives, 7, 8, 9, 10 successive pregnancies, and then they're not productive, and then they're sent off to slaughter for some cheap pork product that goes into soup or a pot pie. The ammonia that these animals are breathing in, the stench that they're breathing in, that's the same smell that the workers are breathing in, with no protections and medical care, all the basics. There's a reason that in the slaughterhouses, the turnover in some of them is 100% from year to year. I mean, people who want a job, who are hardworking, who endure so much misery, they can't even handle it, and the turnover happens. I mean, the people and the animals are just property to be moved in and out of the system. Chickens, confined in tiny battery cages with each bird getting 67 square inches of space, less space than an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Now, are we this miserly as a species that animals who give up their lives to us, that we treat them in this way with no dignity and no decency? And is it any surprise that in these settings we have all of the injuries and workplace health problems that the people endure? Because they too are often powerless against the people who are running the operation, if they're immigrants or they're first-generation folks who haven't been able to organize and stand up. It's all connected. These buildings are so big, it's a football-length size field. The birds may be stacked up, 8 high. You've got to go to a catwalk to look at the birds on levels 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the ratios of animals to workers, they're in some buildings, there may be 150,000 or 250,000 birds. There may be just 1 or 2 workers or 3 workers. The ratios are terrible. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, discussing battery cage operations, the effects of ammonia include nausea, vomiting, chest pain, difficulty breathing, headaches, lung damage, increased susceptibility to bacterial infections. Of course, if it's unhealthy for the animals, it's going to be unhealthy for the people as well. These are the ratios of the people to the animals. If you're just looking at the birds, we talk about these enormous volumes of strawberries and tomatoes picked. What about checking all of these animals? What an overwhelming, back-breaking job it is in this fundamentally unhealthy environment. The folks who are in the slaughter plants, again, shackling the birds, a miserable environment for them. Human Rights Watch said meat packing is the most dangerous factory job in America. We can restore our connection with animals, and when we do, there are better outcomes for us. And Cesar Chavez, of course, saw all of these issues as connected, and now Arturo with the farm workers and others are abiding by those same principles. When we are good to animals, there are better outcomes down the line. The same causes of cruelty to animals are the same issues at work in the mistreatment of workers. We really need a greater quotient of decency and kindness in this world. It is all connected, and we are all brothers and sisters in the struggle. Thank you all very much.